Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And here he is in the co-captain's chair once again, Mr. Grant Arthur from Grant's
Hey,
Rock Warehouse and the Contrarians. What's happening, my friend?
here we are. Hey, glad to be back, Pete. Doing great. Everything's wonderful. How are you?
Cool. Doing all right. Doing all right. I'm back from vacation. No, not really. We taped this before I went on vacation, but I will say I'm hoping that I'll be coming back all sorts of refreshed and happy to be home after a fun week up at the Finger Lakes in New York. But yeah, but we're doing another small catalog again today, but a pretty cool one. Only two albums. A Canadian band that probably, three-quarters of the folks watching this episode are probably like, I've never heard of Dillinger before. You know what? I never heard of Dillinger before up until about, what was that? When did we do the Hunt
A
episode?
couple months ago,
A couple
probably.
months ago, and I had never heard of the Hunt before that either. So, yeah, this is a Canadian band who were on, was it Daffodil Records? Canadian label, small Canadian label. And they released two records in the mid 70s, early mid 70s, and then kind of broke up and became The Hunt. The Hunt we covered before. The Hunt were a very cool, somewhat proggy hard rock band.
Yeah.
Really good and really worth your time. If you haven't seen the episode, go back and watch it. But we're going to talk about the two albums that they did as Dillinger from 1974 and 1975. And kind of like last week's episode, where we had the Rosington Collins Band release two albums and their only albums within a year of each other and then kaput. Very similar here. Uh, Basically a year and a half, I think 2 years they were together, and then the band just kind of dissolved and became another band and had some lineup changes and then had more lineup changes. And yeah, so I don't know, Grant, you want to talk a little bit about who's in the band before we get
Yeah,
started?
this band was started out. Okay. So we've already talked about the hunt.
Yeah.
So the hunt really were Dillinger. A couple of gym members quit. They reformed. The management came to them and said, you know what? We should rename you. And the manager's last name was Hunt. And he christened them the Hunt.
The Hunt.
And Pete and I looked at that catalog, and it's absolutely wonderful. Great Canadian rock, great Canadian prog. Now we look at Dillinger. Dillinger's a lot more proggy, but you can see the progression as we talk through these records. First, second album. The second album, you can see how that first Hunt album just kind of segues right up to that. It all makes sense. So this band was formed in 1973 by the Harrison brothers, Jacques and Robert. Robert played drums. Robert eventually quit. Jacques stayed with the band and kept and formed the Hunt. We had another member, Paul Cockburn, who's the guitar player. He's in the Hunt. So the Hunt really kept going because Paul and Jacques carried the flag. Now, on these two records, Jacques is singing. On the Hunt records, we got a different vocalist, but that's a different story. So the bass player on here is Terry Bramall. Um, these guys can play just as good as the Hunt can. It's just a little bit different. Self-titled album. This has a lot of different styles on it.
Yeah.
Heavy prog. You've got parts of these songs just venture into jazz, and you're listening to it and going, "How did you get from there to there?"
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
sitting there going, "Wow." Then you've got bluesy hard rock. The first album, well, I don't know how you want. Well, actually, this is how we're gonna. Well, I don't know how you want to rank these, but I was just gonna go into it. I'm figure that you and I are gonna rank them the same, but I don't know.
Well, why don't we just kind of like what we did last week, although last week we kind of ranked them, but
Yeah.
let's just talk about the first album. We'll give our
Okay.
assessment. We'll talk about the second album, we'll give our assessment, and then we'll each reveal which one we prefer because this is
Okay.
really close for
It's
me.
close.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some slight differences. Now, the second album, which we're going to discuss, which is this, people will be interested to know that this has ties to Terry Brown. I think Terry Brown engineered it. We also have John from Klaatu is one of the producers on it. So, the first album is very much like a homebrew kind of thing. Um, Production's still fine. I don't have a problem with it, but the second album, we boost things up. So John Wallace, I can never pronounce his name. Wallachuk, there you go, was producer, and W.H. Davies was also a producer. And I think he's the manager of the band, so he's the one that came up with the name The Hunt. Anyway, on a tangent already. This first record, we said it came out in 1974. Um, I would say that this Canadian prog at its best. I'm not sure. I don't have any Canadian prog bands that come to mind off the top of my head. Um, there's 4 tracks on the record. It starts out with the track People. Now, when it starts off, it reminds me of King Crimson. And I swear to God, Ian McDonald's on here playing horns, but he's not.
It's
But I
shocking.
said, what is going on here? It's Jacques.
Yep.
Jacques plays a lot of this stuff. Keyboards, horns, flutes. Um, but what a way to lead off the record.
It's a good song.
I wrote organ, guitars. This band, you never know where they're going to go next. They fly off into different time signatures. They head into straight jazz. The the organ sounds on here, or just the organ in general, reminds me of Uriah Heep, but the guitars predominate throughout the whole thing. Paul Cockburn is a great player. Pete and I have talked about it on the Hunt show, how the guitars are so great. There's a lot of flute on this album. The flutes we will see on the Hunt first album. It's just a carryover, but it's like Jethro Tull, King Crimson, jazz. It's a
Chicago,
crazy
Blood, Sweat, and
Chicago,
Tears.
the
Yeah, it's
craziest. It's a mixed bag. City Man's the second track. Heavy guitars lead off this track. Lots of harmony, a catchy chorus. I wrote on here, I said, well, this has to be the single. These guys aren't going to sell any records, but it's the most, commercial track on the album.
yeah.
I think when I listen to this, and you might agree with me, I think that the weak link for Dillinger is Jacques' lead vocals. I don't really think that he's much of a singer. We
Yeah,
get we
they're
get a
not
lot of
terrible, but yeah,
harmonies.
he's not very strong. I don't think they're bad, but they're definitely not a selling point. I think their instrumental abilities is what really kind of hooks you in here for sure.
Mhm. But I mean, if you look at the musicianship and the players, the band have chops. They are not afraid to show it off. Um, Same as before, City Man, there are moments in this song where it verges on jazz, but I would put this song, I would classify it as heavy prog. Okay. Nature's Way, the Spirit song.
Yeah.
It They slow it down a bit, which is okay. They're not doing anything much differently than Spirit did, other than slow it down. There's no prog here. Um, but then it makes me wonder, what is this band about? Is this a prog band? Is this a pop band masquerading as a prog band? I don't know. Because if you've ever heard Spirit's Nature's Way, well, it's not much different.
Yeah.
Um, the next track is Live and Return. You've got a jazz intro. And I'll tell you, Robert Harrison really shows off his drumming chops. He's a great drummer. But there's a drum solo later in the track. And this is a studio album. Not sure what's going
It's
on
like a
there.
live jam is what it is basically.
Sounds like a lot. I guess it's a live jam. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
17
But
minutes. Yeah, it's a little.
but it totally derails everything as far as I can see. Tons of harmonies. Paul is in fine form on this. Tasty licks. And Terry Bramall, golly, is a bass player. Very tasty. A great band. Lots of great musicianship here. Is it a perfect record? No. Um, it's just a little bit all over the place. I don't know. Carried away. What do you think of this record?
Well, yeah. I mean, the album is just barely 30 minutes long. So right there, it's short. Uh, Nature's Way is fine for what it is, but I agree with you. They don't do anything different with it. To me, it's kind of throwaway.
It's a throwaway, but it also sticks out like a sore thumb
It
compared to the
does.
other
It
material.
doesn't
It's
match anything else
weird.
on here. Yeah, it's just it's like they tried to do something as close to the original Spirit version as possible, and it's obviously not quite as good, and it's just so different than everything else on this album. So that's one strike against it. And again, it's not terrible, but it's not needed. And then Live and Return is 17 minutes long. It's got all the drum solos, this solo, that solo, that solo. in there is a probably really good 8 to 10 minute long song because there's some good vocal harmonies
Yeah.
here and some good riffing and whatever. And it's just like, so you take out the whatever it is, 4 or 5 minute version of Nature's Way, and you cut at least half of Live and Return out, and you have like a 20-minute album. So
You got
there's
an EP.
you got an EP. I will say People is great. City Man is great. And half of the big long track is really good. So I think there's some really good stuff going on here. Instrumentally, I love it. Is it prog? Is it jazz rock? Is it hard rock? Is it pop? It's like all those things. So maybe there's an identity crisis going on here. I don't know. I really like a lot of this though. Like I said, I think they're great musicians. I love how they drop in those little jazz and jazz rock and fusion bits here and there, which is just like it comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, there they are trying to be Chicago, or there's that reminds me of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, or it's like, it's just it's weird how it just pops in, but it works. And the guitar playing is great. The organ sounds are killer on here. Um, Great flute. Yeah, I like this album. I just think that
Oh,
it's
I like it too. I just think it needs to be honed in some or
yeah,
edited.
yeah.
Maybe they needed a producer. That might have been a good thing.
Yeah, I think to me, scrap the cover of Nature's Way, cut the big long jam down a little bit, and give us another 6 minute song. And you've got a really different story here to tell. But still, really good debut. It's very solid. To me, though, the magic really starts to happen on the second album, which we're going to talk about now.
And it's also a bit of a hodgepodge to some degree,
To an
but
extent, yes,
to
yeah,
an extent.
yeah, yeah.
But I think on Live and Return, if they could have got rid of that drumming section, that would have made a big difference.
It's just too
But
much, right? Yeah,
it's just too much. But I get it. It's all good. It's fine. It's all right. I would still recommend this for anybody looking into the band, especially if you're a Hunt fan. Hopefully, you got turned on to that show that we did
yeah.
because we were gloating over the Hunt. Uh, I would definitely go out and check this out. Both of these are still in print.
Yep.
Um, though after we, you know what, though after we did that Hunt show, everything sold out.
I'm sure whatever
You
like
know
five
that?
ten copies that were left were probably like Unit Disc was like, all right, we got nothing left.
Even the Dillinger ones, because we talked about Dillinger and all the Dillinger ones sold out. So
Yeah.
hopefully, when this airs, everybody's had a chance to listen to their Dillinger CD
Hopefully.
and can
Hopefully.
chime in. Look at that album cover.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? That's the second album here, which we're going to talk about now. So this is Don't Lie to the Band, which
Don't Lie to the Band 1976, same lineup. Jacques, Paul, Terry, and Robert. And like I said, now you have John Walashuk from Klaatu. You've got Steve Vaughn and Rush producer Terry Brown at the helm. W.H. Davies is also, he's the manager, but he's also producing. So we've got a lot of producers. But just listen to the sound of this record. You know that Terry Brown's recording it. It sounds like Terry Brown. 8 tracks. We've got a couple of covers. We've got Spooky Tooth, Two Time Love, which opens the album, and then we've got Beatles Taxman, and I don't like Beatles covers, but it really doesn't sound like the Beatles by any means. And we know
no,
that.
not at all.
So I'm not gonna hold it against them. So, like I said, we start out with Two Time Love. Again, it reminds me of Uriah Heep. There are prog elements still here or there. I don't think this is so much straight prog as opposed to more straight heavy rock.
Yeah.
Um, I also hear those King Crimson horn parts. Why he sounds like Crimson, I don't know, but it just sounds like Crimson to me. And it's a Spooky Tooth cover, but I can't tell. It could have been a song penned by the band as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I
But
mean, give
it's
him
just,
credit for picking like a kind of obscure Spooky Tooth song. I think that's the
yeah,
cool thing about it, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. But the thing is, we're talking sequencing of the album. The album is odd for the fact that it opens up with 2 covers.
Yeah.
Now, the band songs, as we're going to see, are just fine. Why are we opening up with 2 covers? I find it very odd.
Yeah.
Second track is Taxman. This is funk. This is not. This is not prog. This is not blues. This is a pure funk track. Think average white band cutting the cake, and that's what this song sounds like. It sounds like cutting the cake. Is that good or bad? I don't know. But you've got the Taxman lyrics floating over the top of it or the melody. It's odd. It's odd. These guys are handling all these different styles. I don't know if they know how to hone it in or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
It is odd. I give him credit for trying to do something different with it, but
yeah,
I'm like, this is kind of strange, you know. I don't,
I will give you this, Pete. The guitar solo is pretty killer on this
oh
song.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah.
It's Not Mine. Now, this reminds me of Spirit again. It kind of reminds me of Nature's Way off the debut. Obviously, it's not, but I'm thinking this probably would have been the single off this record. Um, it's an okay track, but I think the weak link are Jacques' lead vocals. Um, the Hunt totally fixed the problem with Jacques. Not that there's a problem, but I think that's the weak link. And when Brian came on as the lead vocalist, and he just totally changed Dillinger. He was the secret ingredient to the Hunt. Um, the next track is Munchkin Man. Now everybody's gonna laugh. Munchkin Man? What the hell? Well, it's probably my favorite track on the album, even though it's a silly title. Great organ riffs. It really sounds like something that came out of the 60s.
It's very psychedelic.
It's very psychedelic, and we're talking 19, what are we, 1976? I
Yeah.
forget. I'm on a rant. Yeah, 1976. It does not fit with the times at all. But you've got the great Uriah Heep organ, got great riffs. Middle section is very Yes-like. If you like Yes, these guys can play Yes. You can hear Chris Squire style bass lines, Steve Howe chord structures. And then what's weird about this song in that next section is that it does a complete turnaround and it turns into Jethro Tull. You've got the flute. It's just pretty wild. You really have to hear it to understand it. And yes, the title's odd. We're Munchkin. It's bizarre, but you sprinkle a little bit of camel on top of it. Hopefully, you get that flavoring. It's a mix of Yes, camel, Paul, Heap.
Do you hear? You know what I hear a little bit of too?
What
The
else? What?
quirkiness of it. I hear a little Max Webster. We'll keep it in Canada, right?
Max
Meanwhile,
Webster.
Max Webster's still an infant band at this time, but I hear a little of the quirkiness of Kim Mitchell and company in this
I
song as
could. You
well.
could put Kim Mitchell on this to sing it, and you'd be just fine.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Next track is You Lied, another 8-minute epic. You got some keyboard lines on here. It really sounds like Rick Wakeman to me. A little bit of Crimson, and the song kind of turns into a Kansas track as far as I'm concerned. I just hear Rick Wakeman, King Crimson, and Kansas on here. Is that good or bad? You let us know in the chat. Robot Race, another 6-minute track. Um, organ and guitar dominated, very heavy. This is a highlight for the guitar work of Paul. Paul is very Robin Trower on here. After he does his guitar solo, we have an organ solo. This is an instrumental workout. I love this. I love this track because all these guys have chops, and Paul as a guitar player, phenomenal. Coming Home is another long. All these songs are
They
long.
are long, yeah, yeah.
Was this a 2 album set? I don't know. If not, if they cram this onto a single album, it must have sounded just hideous. Coming Home is kind of an introspective track. Thick, rich backgrounds. Reminds me of Camel, Nectar. Lots of Mellotron on this song.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fine. I think side two might be better than side one. I can't even pronounce that. Bumpadilly? Bumpadilly?
Bumpa dilly dilly,
What
bumpa
the
diddly,
hell?
bumpa diddly.
Bumpadidly.
Yeah.
What the hell are these guys doing?
I don't know.
Cool riffs. I mean, the riffs are great, but by the time we get to the end of this record, though, I do think that this is a better album. I do grow weary of Jacques' vocals. And I don't know if this is good or bad. I keep saying that over and over, but this is very much a 60s sounding record to me. The 60s reverb, I'm kind of worn out by the end of it. But I will say this is a better record than the debut. But for something that came out in 1976, boy, does it have its, you know,
It's a little dated. It's
like
a little dated for
it's a little,
76.
it's way dated for 76.
Yeah.
Now, Pete, now I can look at it and go, well, that's kind of cool. But at
True.
the time, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I could see where a band like this is completely out of fashion in 1976. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right?
Mhm.
Um, but there is. I sometimes wonder, Grant, if we take out some of the weaker stuff on these two albums
Mhm.
and put them both together, you're left with a pretty damn kick-ass album, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind
Mhm.
of where we're at. I agree. The Spooky Tooth cover is fine. The Taxman cover is weird. Are they needed? Maybe not. Munchkin Man is terrific. I
It's
mean,
terrific. It's
that's that.
goofy, but
Yeah,
it's terrific.
yeah. That's one of the best songs on either of these albums. It's really, really good. Um, I think You Lied is terrific. It's got a cool spacey proggy vibe. I love the organ, really good. Robot Race is also terrific. The organ playing on both of these
Brilliant.
albums, really good. I mean, you just stick Jacques to being a keyboard player, although his horn stuff is great too, and not
Right.
sing, and he's a really great musician. Coming Home is a really interesting song. You know what I get? The vibes I get? I get Low
Mhm.
Spark of High Heel Boys from.
Oh, it's very traffic like.
Yeah, right. And then all of a sudden that Mellotron comes in. You're like, whoa, where'd that come from? Right? Very, very cool. And I think the Bump a Diddly Diddly or whatever the hell it is fun. It's quirky. It reminds me of like the first or second Styx albums. It reminds me of like the Wooden Nickel stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like with the vocal
Mhm.
harmonies and things like that.
Mhm.
I think this is a cool album. I think, but you said it earlier in the show, this is the perfect bridge from between the first album and the first Hunt album. This is kind of like the best of both worlds from both
Mhm.
of those. And then the band by the second Hunt album really changes quite a bit.
Right.
But I think this is a really good album. I like it a lot. It's not perfect. I don't think either one of these albums are perfect. But I think that if you were to just kind of take out those couple of weaker tracks from each album and you put them together, you got a really good album here. A really
Yeah,
good album.
I agree.
Musically, it's fantastic. Yeah, maybe the vocals aren't the selling point of these. I don't think they're terrible, but they're not great. But instrumentally speaking, if you're a prog fan or you like early mid 70s heavy rock with some progressive tendencies and certainly some psychedelic tendencies, there's a lot of psych on this album too.
Hmm.
And it sounds like a late 60s, early 70s record. I think these are both really good, and I'm glad I have them. And I think it's just a interesting slice of forgotten Canadian prog rock, hard rock, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
that is worth the attention of anybody who follows this channel who likes this obscure like 70s stuff. It's really good. Good catalog.
Yeah, really good. Second album's better than the first album,
Yeah, we were
but
both in.
it's a progression. I look at Dillinger and Hunt just like this. It's just a progression. They had a lineup change. They changed their name.
Yep.
And then, you've got Jacques going back to just doing horns, and the Hunt, they have a proper lead vocalist. Everything's coming together. The Hunt stuff, they just seem to get better as they went along. And
Yep.
they morph. It's constant morphing with these two bands. Uh, I think it's great stuff. I'm glad that the we got turned on to this.
Yeah. I'm happy too. I think it's great. And got to give some kudos to Unidisc Music Incorporated out of Canada who have made these available again. Although good luck finding them. I'm not quite sure if how easy you can get them now, but
I checked, and they are in stock on Amazon.
there you go. So for those looking to get, and they weren't expensive at all when I
No,
bought these. Yeah.
get them. The
So yeah,
mastering on these are good. Like we've mentioned on the BGO stuff with Rossington Collins, great mastering. They do a fine job with these. So
yep,
get them. If you like the Hunt, by all means, get Dillinger.
yep, absolutely. So Dillinger, that's our ranking, the two albums. If you are aware of this band, let us know what you think of these two albums down below. If you haven't checked them out, you can go listen to these on YouTube or wherever you check out your music. Go give them a listen, come back, let us know what you thought. That's what it's all about here. And we'll see you next time for another episode of Ranking the Albums. Grant is going to join me once again next week. Grant, you want to give everybody a little
Oh,
taste of what
next
we're going to
week
talk about?
we're in the formations with the ideas, but definitely we will be doing a ranking on 60s band, the Yardbirds, because that's been people have been bugging Pete about it. So we are going to tackle that and have a ranking. So stay tuned next week for that.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out exactly what the albums are we're going to cover because they've got an
Yeah,
interesting.
they've got the UK albums are different from the American releases.
Yeah,
So it's just a bit of narrowing those down what we want to do. But yeah, tune back next week for The Yardbirds.
Yardbirds. Yep. So stay tuned for that. This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please also go give some love to Grant's Rock Warehouse and the Contrarians. Of course, the two channels that Grant is a big part of. And we'll see you soon here with more stuff, right? Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. You got one more thing you want to say before we go?
No, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun talking music.
Always fun, Grant. Always good having you
Get the
on.
hunt, get some Dillinger.
That's right. And then everybody start listening to your Yardbirds, and we'll see you next week here for another episode of Ranking the Albums for Grant, Arthur, I, and P. Pardo. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.